Thank you very much indeed, Mr Atkinson, and I would also like to congratulate the Honourable Member for Grantham and Stanford for securing this debate. He spoke authoritatively and gave us a good base of the history of Israel, and indeed I think the debate today has been an incredibly positive one. The number of people attending and speaking in this debate I think is a testament to the importance of the State of Israel and indeed its place in the region and on the world stage. And it's been very welcome also to have a debate that touches on many of the aspects of Israel which often do not get covered so often, because we do understandably focus very much on the peace process. So we've had a wide range of topics, from the economics to obviously the grave remembrance of the Holocaust, the political situation, but also education and anti-Semitism and culture and healthcare and international development, and indeed some of the challenges with its neighbours, such as Iran. It's obviously very appropriate timing, just after the 60th anniversary of Israel, and it's important that we celebrate that milestone for the state, and indeed the success of the country in so many of these areas that have been covered in the debate today. It is important to recognise the achievements of the state in its fairly short history so far. But the anniversary is also an opportunity to look forward to the next 60 years and beyond, and it's important to take a sober look at the prospects. The future of Israel must lie in finding peace with its neighbours, and sadly the prospects for that at the moment are looking increasingly fragile. I've visited Israel once, although it was some years ago in 2000, and I think that going to the country is essential to properly understand the climate of fear about the security situation that is there in that country, and that the tension is palpable. I was also struck on my visit with how beautiful the country is, and despite its small size, how varied it is, from the mountainous north and the Golan Heights to the wonder that is the Dead Sea. The beautiful golden beaches was mentioned in Tel Aviv, but also next to a bustling city. And Jerusalem itself, which is frankly just stunning, with history around every corner.
The Dead Sea, did she notice that the level of it is falling by between 1 and 2 metres a year, and because of excessive water abstraction, it's going to disappear within the next 20 years?
Having only visited it once, I wasn't able to notice the change in the Dead Sea, but I have indeed read of the problems with the lack of water, and indeed the politics of water in the area generally was something which I hadn't necessarily clocked before my visit, in terms of how vital that was, and how the issues of water underlay indeed many of the political tensions in the area. And with climate change, this is only likely to increase. But obviously my visit was some years ago, so I thought it would be good to hear from some people, and it has been good to hear from people who have visited more recently. I spoke yesterday to my honourable friend, the member for Brent East, who last month was on a cross-party delegation to Israel to look at the situation there, and she was quite struck by the problems and the difficulties that there are, from the Israeli town of Sderot, which is under daily mortar fire, and indeed this delegation of MPs narrowly missed being hit by a Qassam rocket at the Gaza checkpoint, to Gaza itself, which she just described as an appalling horror, with raw sewage lakes surrounding it, and a lack of basic medical supplies, and a sort of lottery of life or death, whether or not somebody who's sick was able to get a pass to go out to the better medical facilities, where indeed some Palestinians are treated, as the Honourable Member for Liverpool mentioned. And this is the backdrop that we're in. But equally, I think we have a lot of agreement around the House that we need to have two separate states, for Israel and for Palestine, with secure borders, and rid the area of the scourge of violence which has blighted so many lives on both sides, and has created this atmosphere where people live daily in a state of fear. The relaunch of the efforts for the peace process at Annapolis, I think perhaps were viewed by many as slightly optimistic, with the timetable of concluding the peace process by the end of 2008. But it has to be remembered there is no better way than dialogue. You know, the current situation and the violence is never going to bring a solution to the issue, and so despite the many barriers, it has to be the dialogue which is the path that we pursue. But there are many, many obstacles to success. I think, to be honest, the quartet itself has some flaws. It is widely seen as being driven by the US, which is not necessarily therefore seen as an honest broker in the process. And I have to say the choice of our former Prime Minister as its representative, given his history in Iraq and in the region, was not necessarily the most obvious choice as somebody who would be able to bring peace, although obviously we wish him well in his very difficult job. I know the quartet obviously has much dialogue with Arab countries, but I think the lack of an Arab representative on the quartet is indeed also a problem. And I think it would be much better if, instead of being driven by the US, it was actually driven through the UN and chaired by the Secretary-General. Obviously, the violence on a daily basis is going to be a huge barrier, and indeed, not until that violence is renounced is progress likely to happen. And indeed, the history, which we've heard a lot about today, of suspicion and mistrust on both sides, is going to be something which is very difficult to overcome. I've mentioned the injustice of Gaza and the humanitarian issues which are so pressing. And again, I think until there is a basic level of humanitarian sort of standards there, it is going to be incredibly hard to see a way forward. But there's also the issue of the settlements, which the Quartet has expressed deep concern over just a couple of weeks ago. And indeed, as was already mentioned in an intervention from my honourable friend, the number of settlements can actually reduce the viability of a potential Palestinian state. And if we want to see a two-state solution, then that is a thorny issue that does need to be tackled. And indeed the political situation, the election of Hamas, the weak leadership that there has been historically on both sides to actually act. And I think, I can't remember which member mentioned it, but take the risk for peace, which I thought was a good way of putting it, because it is a risk, but that is the risk that needs to be taken, and the prize itself is one that is worth taking that risk for. But although the situation can seem hopeless, I think there are some chinks of light if we choose to look for them. The citizens, both in Palestine and Israel, do want to live in peace. Like most people, that's a basic thing that people aspire to, and that is a good position to start from. And we need to focus on getting the parties talking. There are the three conditions that have been outlined about renunciation of violence and accepting previous peace agreements and recognising Israel. I think we need to recognise that if we wait until all three of these conditions are met before talking to Hamas, then we may actually leave it too late. Now, there needs to be no doubt whatsoever that renunciation of violence is absolutely essential, but if there are positive moves made by Hamas, then I think those should be rewarded, working towards the other two conditions being met, because the dialogue process is absolutely essential if we're going to find peace in this region. I just wanted to end with just an anecdote from somebody that I met. She was on a trip to the UK recently. Her name was Waza Fahoum, and she's an Israeli Arab. And I found her an incredibly inspiring person. She's the chair of an Arab Jewish centre in Haifa called Beit Hagafan. And what they do, just at a grassroots level, is they organise meetings, cultural activities, both celebrating Arab culture and Israeli culture. They have education and classes, they have festivals, and lots of opportunities for Arabs and Jews to be working together. And to me, it seemed that at the grassroots, at least, there are some people that are getting it right and that are finding a way to live together in harmony and indeed learn and share time and culture together. And it's those things that I think we should perhaps focus on as some points of light and optimism for a future settlement. And I think the politicians in the region would do well to learn from some of the people at the grassroots that are actually making it happen and working with each other in peace and harmony, because it's only by politicians learning to do that, have that dialogue and follow that example, that we're ever going to see peace in this troubled region.